The scream tore through the stillness of the plains like a lightning strike across a cloudless sky. Tom Walker had heard a lot in his years living alone out west, the wind howling through the canyons, coyotes calling to the moon, and thunder cracking above the hills like heaven splitting open. But this scream was different. It was raw human, and it carried something that cut deeper than any sound he'd ever heard out there: desperation. He followed the sound to the dry creek bed near his ranch, and there, crumpled in the dust, was a woman. She was barefoot, covered in grime, and trembling, gripping her side as if her very soul were leaking out. Tears had carved clean lines through the dirt on her cheeks. Tom didn't know her name, didn't know what brought her to the middle of nowhere. But what he did in that moment would change both their lives forever. Tom Walker wasn't the kind of man folks remembered in town. That's because he rarely went. He had chosen silence over conversation, land over luxury. His ranch was 6 miles from the nearest soul, and that's exactly how he liked it. Each morning, he rose before the sun, fed his horses, and checked the fences. Each evening, he read old newspapers by oil lamplight, his old hound whiskey curled at his feet. He didn't miss the world. Not the gossip, not the war stories, and certainly not the mistakes. Tom had been many things in his life: a soldier, a son, even a husband once. But out here, he was just a man with his land, his dog, and his peace. That peace, however, ended the moment that scream rang out. It came late in the afternoon. Tom was stacking hay, sweat clinging to his brow, when the sound stopped him cold. A scream, long, sharp, human. Not an animal in pain, not the wind playing tricks on his ears. It was real, desperate. Even old whiskey perked up and let out a low, guttural growl. Tom dropped the hay bale, grabbed his Winchester, and mounted his horse in a single, smooth motion. He didn't know what he'd find out there, but something in that scream, it shook something loose in him, something he hadn't felt in years: compassion. He followed the sound for nearly 2 miles, riding fast through the brittle brush and under the orange glow of a sun starting to set. Then he saw her. At the base of a gnarled mesquite tree, near the edge of a dry creek bed, lay a woman. Her clothes were torn, her skin pale. She held her side like she was trying to keep something vital from spilling out. She looked up at him with wide, watery eyes. "Please," she whispered, "help me." Tom dismounted and knelt beside her. Her pulse was weak, her skin burning with fever. He spotted swelling near her lower ribs. Not a gunshot, not a snake bite. "Scorpion," he muttered. She barely managed a nod. Didn't see it. Without wasting another second, he gently scooped her into his arms and rode back toward the ranch. By the time they reached his small cabin, night had begun to settle. The sky had turned from gold to a deep, bruised violet. Crickets sang their nightly chorus in the brush. Tom placed her on the bed and lit the lantern, its warm light pushing back the shadows. He cleaned her wound as best he could, wrapped her side with clean cloth, and gave her water in slow, careful sips. She drifted in and out of consciousness, her whispers nothing more than fevered murmurs. He sat by her side all through the evening, just watching, waiting. But by midnight, she was worse. The fever had taken a powerful hold. Her body trembled uncontrollably, and sweat poured from her brow. Tom knew the signs. She wouldn't make it until morning. The only doctor within 100 miles lived to town's over. It was a full day's ride by horse, even longer with a wagon. But if he didn't go now, she would die. Tom looked out the window at the canyon path, a narrow, unstable track, treacherous and dangerous even in daylight. He turned back to her, heard her breath hitch in a shallow gasp, and made the choice. He carefully loaded her into the wagon, hitched the horses, and rode into the darkness. The trail was rough. Sharp rocks and shifting ground threatened them at every turn. The wagon jolted hard, but Tom kept one hand steady on the reins and used the other to gently press a cool cloth to her forehead, trying to soothe the heat radiating from her skin. The wind howled through the canyon like angry spirits chasing them down. Twice, coyotes appeared in the distance, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark, watching them pass. Then came a rock slide, a minor one, but enough to block the trail completely. With his heart pounding in his chest, Tom had to climb down and lift a heavy boulder himself, praying the whole time that the wagon wouldn't tip over on the unstable ground. By the time the first sliver of dawn pierced the sky, they finally reached the doctor's cabin. Tom banged on the door with all his remaining strength. The doctor, an older man with eyes as clear as glass, took one look at the girl and ushered her inside without a word. Tom stayed on the porch, covered in dust, hands shaking, his heart heavy with a strange mix of fear and hope. Hours passed like molasses. Finally, the doctor opened the door. "You saved her," he said simply. Tom returned days later to check on her. She was sitting up in bed, weak but alert. Her name was Lena. She told him she'd been traveling west with her brother and to other families when they were ambushed by bandits. In the chaos, the group was scattered. She ran, got lost, and eventually slept under a cactus out of sheer exhaustion. Then, something stung her. That was all she remembered. "I thought I was going to die alone," she said softly, her voice still raspy. "I didn't think anyone would find me, let alone help me." Tom just looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You screamed," he said. That was enough. Lena stayed at the ranch longer than expected. First, to recover her strength. Then, well, just because. She began to help Tom around the place. She fixed his old sewing kit with surprising skill and repaired a fence gate that had been leaning for months. In return, he taught her how to ride properly, how to spot the signs of a coming storm on the horizon, and how to stay quiet and just listen to the land. She brought laughter to a home that hadn't heard it in years. And Tom, a man who once chose silence above all else, now found a strange comfort in the sound of her voice. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills in a spectacular blaze of orange and pink, Lena stood beside him on the porch. "You didn't have to save me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But you did." Why? Tom looked at her for a long moment, the fading light catching the lines on his face. Then he spoke softly. "Sometimes we think we're saving someone else, but maybe we're the ones being saved." She smiled, and tears welled up in her eyes. In the distance, the wind whispered through the trees soft this time, gentle dot peaceful. The quiet ranch had found its life again as the silhouettes, a man and a woman, rode side by side across the open plains into a new day. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories that remind us of the kindness that can be found in the most unexpected places. We'll see you next time.